Today, we kick off the 2024 NFL draft cycle with a look at my top 10 quarterbacks in the 2024 draft. Before we start, some honorable mentions to Devin Leary of Kentucky, Carter Bradley of South Alabama, and Talia Tungavailoa of Maryland. Kicking it off at number 10, we're going to have a guy who was actually one of the Heisman favorites before the season started, and that's going to be Florida State's Jordan Travis. Now, Travis is my number 10 quarterback, so personally, I don't believe he'll be anything more than a good backup, and I think that's more than likely what you're going to be drafting him as, is a backup quarterback that you're hoping can turn into a high-level backup, and there's some traits there for sure. He is good at creating for himself. He's a decently athletic quarterback. The main issue with Travis comes to the fact that he's just not an every down thrower. He's just not someone you want quarterbacking a team that you're hoping to seriously compete. He doesn't have the strongest arm in the world, and he's just not the highest processor. He also had a couple of good receivers there at FSU that, definitely helped with some overthrows at times, considering he had Keon Coleman. It's just a guy that, you're not expecting much more than a backup someday in the NFL. So I have him here at 10. I have a 5th round grade on him right now. He's a little bit older as well, which is not that big of a deal to me. He's going to be 24 as a rookie, but like I said, that's not a big deal to me. It really just comes down to the fact that he's not a great quarterback. At number 9, I have another quarterback that I've currently got a 5th round grade on from Western Kentucky. It's going to be Austin Reed, who I do prefer over Travis for a few simple reasons. Number one, he is a bit more of your prototypical sized and pocket quarterback, and he's not he's not a very mobile guy. However, he does remind me a good deal of Bailey Zappi, not just helmet scouting, but they are similar quarterbacks. And, maybe he doesn't quite have the arm that Zappi had, but Reed is definitely able to make those kind of more play-by-play throws that Travis just can't, in my opinion. I also do think he's got a better arm. I actually like the, not so much the power, but rather just the elasticity to it, I guess is the best word to use. And I will say he's not mechanically sound as much as you'd want, which again is why he's here at number 9. This is again a guy who's a developmental backup and not going to be anything else in the league. I think Bailey Zappi's a very good comparison for him of what he'll be and how he plays. Again, with the exceptions, as I said. So number 9, Austin Reed, 5th round. Number 8 is going to be kind of the top of the lower tier in this top 10 that we're talking about, and it's going to be Michael Pratt from Tulane, who I do have a 4th round grade on. So I have a early day 3 grade on him. And I will say of these kind of bottom 3 guys, he stands out as the best as far as like a quarterback who I think can serve as a good backup day 1 in the NFL. He's got some similar things that I like and dislike about him. He's got nice size, and I'd say he's a bit more athletic than Austin Reed. I'd also say he's got the best arm of the 3. Maybe I'd still lean Travis as far as a creator and athletic ability, but for me, Pratt kind of brings the best combination of what you're looking for in a backup quarterback. Still a developmental guy, and honestly, I don't think it's crazy to think that Pratt could be a lower end starter, but he's definitely not a guy that a team is going to be wanting to start for them. However, like I said, among this lower tier, he's my favorite of the guys. I think he will be a good backup in the NFL, and I think that's worth a mid-round pick. So number 8, Michael Pratt. At number 7, I have a guy who I know is going to piss some people off. But I have Michael Penix Jr. as my number 7 quarterback in the class. I have a 3rd round grade on him. So I do think that he's someone worth taking day 2 that, it's not out of the realms of possibility that he could turn into a low-end starter. However, I think his role in the NFL is ultimately going to be a backup quarterback. While he does have a great arm and he can throw downfield, he also played with some very good receivers. Romo Duns is one of the better receivers we've had in recent draft class. I think Jalen Polk is probably a 1st rounder for right now. He is for me. And I also like Jalen McMillan. So he's had some good receivers to work with as well as a good offensive line. Really, at Washington, there was just a lot of effort, someone's down their passes. A lot of his big plays, a lot of his notable plays were deep balls. And while he does have a pretty deep ball, that's just not how the NFL works. When he was forced to work in structure, to make the reads, to hit across the middle of the field, he just wasn't very good at it, and he wasn't consistent when he did get it to go. And honestly, I'm not even that worried about the age and the injuries, which is a thing people bring up a lot. You can aggravate anything at any time. But he's played a couple healthy seasons now, and quarterbacks play till they're 40, so I don't think it really matters. Same thing with Jordan Travis. At the end of the day, though, like I said, he's just not. He's not a plus creator. He's not a play extender. He's got a pretty deep ball, but that's about all he has to him, in my opinion. And so this is a guy that I don't see going first round. There's a reason people like him, right? Again, he could be a low-end starter, but I think his best role is as a backup in the NFL. Coming in at number 6 is going to be a guy that I definitely cooled off on for a while, as most people did, and that's going to be Spencer Rattler. Now, I do have a second round grade on Rattler, which, I think is probably higher than where most have him. However, I think I feel really positively about Rattler overall nowadays. There's a reason he was, at one point, the number 1 pick. In my earliest 2022 mock draft, he was the number 1 pick. And for most people, it was either him or Sam Howell, right? And obviously things didn't go the way we expected it to, but as I said, there's a reason that he was in that conversation. When you look at the traits and the tools, he has a great arm. He can create for himself, no doubt, and he's got play extension. I think he's able to hit those shots that need to be hit. Really, I understand that there's some issues regarding his personality and stuff. He's also had some years to mature now at South Carolina, and he's still got time in the NFL to mature and develop his game more. In my opinion, I feel he's someone worth taking. Again, that maybe mid to late day 2, or round 2, I guess, where, again, he's not going to be a top 10 quarterback by any means. But if you can find, a lower end starter, or maybe even a middle of the road starter in the second round, if your team is in a tough situation when it comes to quarterback, or even if you want a really high end backup, I think Rattler's a good pick. He just doesn't have the same issues that he used to have, in my opinion. I think he has matured his game a lot. And the only thing I'm really going to say he still has to seriously work on is that he's not very pocket savvy. He doesn't sense the pocket as well as he should, especially for someone I think he's played at least 3, but probably 4 years now. But like I said, he's got time to mature at the NFL level. I like him. I like him more than Penix, which I'm sure is very divisive, but he's my quarterback 6. Number 5 for me is going to be a guy that, a lot of people do not like, J.J. McCarthy. However, like Rattler, I do feel more positive on him than I think most people do. He does have a smaller frame for sure, and he played in a very simple offense at Michigan. And he also had a couple of really good receivers, along with a good tight end and a good offensive line. That all being said, he does have high upside. I don't think that's very debatable. He has an arm that can deliver some high-level throws, and there are absolutely flashes of great play from McCarthy. Of course, there's flashes from all these guys, right? That's why they're getting drafted. But I think McCarthy shows the most promise of you get him a good situation. You give him a couple years to truly develop, and I think you're looking at a guy who could be a top 16 starter in the NFL. That the only caveat, honestly, is that he's going to take a couple years. He's got a lot of mechanical issues. He does need to bulk up. He still definitely doesn't handle pressure very well at this point. But for a guy who is still very young, he's got the stamp of approval from Harbaugh. I don't think he makes it past the 20th pick. I think he's a top 20 pick, and he could deliver on that. It just kind of depends on who drafts him and how they develop him. He's going to need a year at least to get to a level where he's playable, in my opinion. But if you can get that middle of the road quarterback, I think that's worth a first round pick. So he's my quarterback 5. Number 4 for me is going to be Oregon's Bo Nix, who has come a long, long way since his days at Auburn. I was a big hater of Bo Nix for a while. He was pretty consistently always at the bottom of my draft rankings. Since he's gone to Oregon, stuff has changed pretty dramatically. He's a night and day different quarterback from his Auburn days. He hits the high percentage throws more than you'd like, which is great as a starter. He's not the highest play extender creation guy. But as far as a quarterback that's going to sit there and deliver the throws that you need him to make, he's going to make them 9 times out of 10. He did not have a very strong Senior Bowl. I understand that everybody has bad days. People have had bad Senior Bowls. From the tape, there's some legit concerns. Part of what people were talking about at the Senior Bowl is that he doesn't have a very strong arm, and that's true. He doesn't have a very strong arm. And besides that, though, I really don't see too much that is lacking in terms of a starting quarterback. He reminds me a lot of a college Sam Darnold, a Derek Carr, maybe not prime Derek Carr, but a post 2018 Carr. That is worth a first round pick, in my opinion. Like I said, it's a guy that, his best years are going to be, a borderline top 10 quarterback. But I think if he's put in kind of that prototypical system, like, he's mocked to Denver at 12 a lot, which I think is actually a good spot for him, because I think, if you pair him with a guy like Sean Payton, who's going to get the most out of him, I think he's definitely worth that kind of draft stock. So a guy that I feel pretty confident on that will be, at least a low-end starter, but could be better than that, and I think will be better than that. It's a good class, and that's why I've got Bo Nix at 4. Number 3 for me is going to be what seems to be most people's consensus 3, and that's going to be Jayden Daniels. I have been a fan of Jayden Daniels longer than I feel most people have. I remember watching him back in, I think it was around October or November or so, and just kind of wondering, why isn't this guy being talked about more? And then he went on to win the Heisman. He was really good in college, obviously, and will that translate to the NFL? That's where it gets a bit more dicey. He, similar to Penix, he didn't work across the middle of the field tons, and he had some really good weapons at LSU. Malik Neighbors in specific, but Brian Thomas also a good receiver. And his pocket presence is something to be worked on. This is a guy that is 110% a project. At the same time, this is probably also the best boom or bust prospect at quarterback that I've seen, and I've been doing true scouting for this is now year 4. Of course, that's not a ton of great quarterbacks in those classes, but he really is probably the best boom or bust prospect at quarterback that I've seen. And so that's why, genuinely, I believe whether he'll succeed or not is dependent on where he goes. If he goes to a place that gives him, some solid receiving options, a good offensive coordinator or a head coach to work with him, that knows how to develop quarterbacks, I do think he'll be successful because he has a lot of the great tools. He's very athletic. He does have an arm. He can hit those, tough shots, and he makes the high percentage throws. It's all there. It's just that he is still raw in a lot of ways, and he just hasn't worked too much in NFL offenses. It's really going to be an adjustment. So this is, similar to a McCarthy, a guy that's probably going to need to take a year to really get going. But if you put the right pieces around him and you give him the proper time, the ceiling on the guy is very high. I mean, we're talking about a guy who really could be a top 10 quarterback, maybe even a top 5 guy if given the right development. So Jayden Daniels, very high on him. He's pretty good. I don't know if should be going number 3, but I think he'd be a very good fit with the Falcons, for example, or just maybe not 3, but he's a top 5, top 10 guy. Coming in at number 2 for me is going to be Drake May of UNC. And this guy is normally a quarterback 1 in pretty much any other draft. Last year probably would have been quarterback number 1 for me. 2022, without a doubt. 21, I mean, we had Trevor Lawrence, right? But probably number 2. He's a very good quarterback. prototypical size, 6'4", 230 something. I want to say 232 or 234, but very good size. And for that size, is a phenomenal rushing quarterback. He can create these just chunk plays on the ground if you give him the space, which is just not a good idea. Really is similar to, he gets a lot of comps from like a Daniel Jones and a Justin Herbert. It's almost kind of crazy to say, but he's almost like the bottom half of Daniel Jones and the upper half of Justin Herbert, which is naturally very scary. Now, he doesn't have the same arm strength as Herbert, but he does have good arm strength. I'd say some of the main things I'm a little concerned with him about is ultimately what scares me. His footwork's bad, plain and simply. I don't think he has good footwork, and that's going to trip him up a few times. No pun intended. The other thing is that I don't think he handles pressure as well as you'd like, and he's not a all-star level pocket reader. I'm trying to think how to. He doesn't read the plays as well as he should, I guess, is a more simple way to say it. You'd like him to make his progressions a bit quicker and be a bit more decisive. At the same time, he lost a lot of talent at UNC, and Devontae Walker maybe not as good as we thought. So with Drake May, there's a lot to like there, right? Like I'm really nitpicking with what there isn't to like. My issue comes with the fact that he's probably going to end up with the Commanders. And plain and simply, Cliff Kingsbury's just not good at developing quarterbacks. Consistently, he's played with some very talented quarterbacks and gotten the worst out of them. So, right away, the fact that his head coach is Dan Quinn and he's mainly going to be working with, Cliff Kingsbury is not very exciting to me as far as what he could become out of that. Add on to that, the Commanders' O-line was pretty bad last year, and their only reliable weapon is Terry McLaurin. It's not a very good situation. And this is not a guy that's going to fizzle out of the league. We're not talking about, Josh Rosen or Sam Darnold. Like, he is going to be, a starter in the NFL, wherever it is. But that ability to become a MVP top 5 quarterback, while it's there, who knows what a year or more of working with Cliff Kingsbury could do to him. And that's honestly, like I said, the thing that scares me the most. If he was projected to go number 1 to Chicago, I think he'd probably be my number 1 quarterback in the class. But you know who my number 1 quarterback is by now if you're watching this. But yeah, for me, I guess it's Drake May would probably be the number 1 quarterback in most other classes and most other scenarios, even in this class. But for the reason that he's going to Washington and, the fact that we do have one guy left who's also really good, is going to land Drake May at number 2 for me. And like I said, you've probably already figured out who number 1 is by now. It's going to be USC's Caleb Williams. And I already said it, right? Drake May would probably be the number 1 quarterback for me in this class if he was projected to go to Chicago. And if he does go to Chicago, then this kind of changes up, right? Because it's kind of the same thing that applies as far as if Caleb goes to Washington. I'm really scared for his development. And honestly, probably more so. I think that Caleb Williams does have a higher bust chance than Drake May does. At the same time, I also think he's got a higher ceiling. And he is projected to go number 1 Chicago, and I think they've done a wonderful job setting that place up for him. They've invested in the line. DJ Moore's very good, and they have the 9th pick to either get a receiver or a pass rusher or whatever. A lot of money there in Chicago, some good leadership. Matt Eberflus is a good coach. More specifically, I'm a big fan of Shane Waldron, and I'm trying to remember who they brought in as quarterback coach, but I know I liked it, whoever it was. And actually, let me see who they did bring in really quick. Kerry Joseph was his name, who was working with Waldron in Seattle before they left to Chicago. I really like that duo, and I think they're going to do a wonderful job developing Caleb Williams. As far as Caleb Williams, the player, goes, I'm going to be honest, there's not a lot of true weaknesses for me to say here. I know I said Drake May would probably be the number 1 quarterback if he was going to Chicago, but in part that's due to, again, I don't think whoever Washington takes is going to be very good because of the development they've got there. Caleb Williams is a phenomenal quarterback in his own right. The only true weakness that I can say he needs to work on is that he does have one read plays. And honestly, that just kind of feels going back to Trevor Lawrence, where we were talking about Trevor Lawrence as this generational great quarterback. That was my only knock on Trevor Lawrence, was that sometimes he just has one read plays. That's the only thing I can really come up with Caleb Williams, and even then, I don't even know if it's always the worst thing, because while he does have some one read plays for sure, a lot of the time it's the right read is the thing, and a lot of the time he's not even looking to the other half of the field, and then randomly he'll throw to the other half of the field, and it'll be a completion, it'll be a good play. It's hard to blame the guy playing so much hero ball at USC, because a lot of the time they were behind, but a lot of the time it worked out for him. I mean, there's some insane highlight reels of Caleb Williams for a reason. He is insane at play creation, some of the best play creation we've ever seen, honestly. He's got a great arm. He knows his, it was a simpler offense for sure at USC, but he knows his reads. He knows where he wants to go with the ball, and he knows what he's capable of doing. He didn't play with like a bunch of crazy talent like some of these other quarterbacks have at USC. Yeah, I mean, I guess I feel, for me, Caleb Williams feels like the number one pick. He's who Chicago should go with. I think he has the highest upside of any quarterback in this class. And while he does have, maybe a better chance of being a bust compared to a Drake May, for example, I just think it's the right pick. I think they've done a good job with the staff, and I think Caleb Williams is going to be an MVP level player someday, because there's just not that much to really ding him on. He's a really good quarterback, and I think the people saying that he is for sure going to be a bust, that he doesn't sense pressure well and all that, I just kind of disagree with it. That for me, Caleb Williams really comes out as the number one quarterback when all is said and done. But that is going to be my early quarterback rankings for this year's draft. Thank you for watching. Leave a like and subscribe if you like the content, and I will see you guys in the next video.